Hello, I'm Kurt Lidke, Executive Director of Klamath Film, and you just watched Myosotis Love, a beautifully shot narrative film in our Southern Shorts category for the 8th Annual Klamath Independent Film Festival. Joining us now is the director of that film, Charlie LaTourette. Charlie, thank you so much for taking some time out to join us.
Well, thank you, Kurt. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be included in the festival.
So, where did the story behind Myosotis Love come from? Is this based on a personal experience, maybe a relationship with family or friends?
It's a great question. I've been asked that before. It is not from any specific relative or family friend, but I've just heard over the years different stories about people who had dementia. And then I started reading about it and learning and hearing about how there were so many widely different reactions that people have to the diseases. And some of them have extreme fantasies like that and perceive their neighbor or their sister as their spouse and things like that.
Okay, great. Perhaps you should explain what myosotis is for those who aren't familiar.
So, also asked a lot. Myosotis is actually the biological name for the forget-me-not flower. So that, as we've said before, that's for all the local gardeners out there who might know what that means.
See, initially I thought that was the name of the disease somehow. That was the scientific term that I wasn't familiar with.
That's
So,
right.
so you wrote and directed this, and this is your first film. But for a short independent film, you had quite a crew behind it. How did you go about assembling your cast and all your collaborators?
Well, we had a lot of an enormous amount of help. I have a background as a writer and director for the stage. I spent about 10 years in New York many years ago. I like to say before gentrification, writing plays and directing plays in mostly ratty warehouse theaters.
Okay.
And then I grew up here in Oregon, and I moved back here in about 19 in the 90s. And I actually started taking the film classes just a few years ago, and primarily as a writer. And I started writing a number of short scripts, and got some good feedback and submitted the scripts to a number of film festivals and won some awards for those. So I decided, well, it's time to bite the bullet and get one into production. So I collaborated with a couple of people who are extraordinarily helpful. John Bergstrom, who is our producer and served as the first AD. Sean Conley, who is our cinematographer and also served as an associate producer. Uh, they were outstanding. Not only are they talented professionals, but they sort of helped me a lot because it was a little like drinking through a fire hose the first few months of pre-production, learning about all the different things that had to go into making the film. So I had a lot of help, and then a great editor, professional editors and designers, and mostly we just gathered people from around the Portland area who knew each other, who had experience in the film industry. And so I felt very fortunate to have such a great team of crew people, and as well as the cast were just wonderful.
Terrific. So I know this was your first foray into film, but you've had a pretty extraordinary career of relatable fields, right? So tell us some of kind of your background of how you led into film.
Well, as I said, I started out writing and directing for theater, and I did a little bit of television writing back in the day for Another World, which is an old soap opera. And I've always believed in writing character first. I've always thought that the character and the story were the most important thing. And over the last few years, as I got into film, I really began to appreciate how such a visual medium can help tell a story without words in different ways. So that's how I got into it. That was really the basis for it.
Okay. I know that you said that you started to research some of this, but what kind of sold you on the idea of writing a film about dementia and Alzheimer's?
Let's see. Sometimes the muse is a deadline, and I was taking a writing class, and I had like 4 days to put together a sort of a one act little sketch, and I just had for a long time I had this idea in the back of my head about a scene with a man and a woman being confused, and the twist being that you think it's the man who's has memory problems, and then you know at the end it's the woman. So the impetus of having a deadline for this writing class kind of forced me to crank it out, and then I had to go through multiple revisions and generations of the script to get it to where it was finally.
Okay. It is a difficult topic to broach for anyone who has dealt with it personally, to see people that used to be vibrant and then they're kind of faded. I've had some family that have unfortunately gone through this where one day they're just blank and the next day it's like there's nothing wrong with them, or like
Right.
one little tiny thing can just snap them right back into reality. So did you feel a lot of pressure to kind of properly represent that the right way for people who have gone through it?
Yeah, I was actually, yeah, I did a lot of research about that and spoke to some people. I was concerned that I wanted it to be realistic, that after the fact, that people would look at it and go, that, that could really happen. Or I knew that that happened to my grandmother or my uncle, because that does happen, that people can have a fantasy world, and you see it in all sorts of dementias, not just Alzheimer's, but there was my brother-in-law's mother kept at one point, who was having dementia problems, kept thinking she needed to get to the airport. She had to catch a plane, and she was like almost 90 years old and wasn't going anywhere, but she was convinced that that's where she had to go. So it people can turn on a dime like that in terms of a fantasy and reality.
So what do you hope people take away from your film?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I think what I hope they get is that it was a touching moment. And I like to call it that from the man's perspective, it was kind of an act of kindness, an act of love, to sort of play along with her a little bit. He kind of played along with her, not overtly. And it was a fine line to walk where he responded to her um, in such a way that she continued with her fantasy, and yet he didn't cross the line. And in fact, when she reached up and touches him in the film, he puts her hand away because he knows that's not right. And yet he wanted to kind of support her and be sympathetic and empathetic with her.
We've seen some stories like this done in films, and I'm sure occasionally in television too. You said that you'd worked on soap operas. Dementia, Alzheimer's, and dream sequences and coma seems to be a mainstay of that genre. But there's been some films that have touched on things like this a little bit, not always done well, sometimes done extraordinarily well. Um, was there any specific inspiration or other project that you kind of drew from? It was like, okay, that's a good way to represent this, that I should try to make sure I can try to
Not
match.
consciously, yeah.
Okay.
It's a good question, but not consciously. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, my phone started going off all of a sudden. That'd be really
Okay.
confusing if the Meow Mix song started playing in the middle of your interview. Uh, so quick editing point break. Uh,
It's okay. Keep it
so
in. Keep it in.
sure, why not? So tell me about your cast members, Pia and Tim, Pia Shepherd and Tim Yeagers. You come from the theater background, so had you worked with them in the theater side
Yes.
previously? Okay,
Yes, as a matter of fact, this started out as a script in a play for what's in Portland. We have something called the Fertile Ground Festival of New Works, and it's been on for 15 years now, 16 years. They've been doing it in Portland, and over a couple of weekends, they put on many different plays in theaters in different places, and I cast them in that, and I loved working with them, and I knew they both had extensive experience both in stage and film, so I knew they could do it. And I wanted, because it's so intimate, I didn't just cast uh, new actors. I actually cast the people who did it for me in the stage version, which was more of a reading, less not more of a stage reading than an actual production. But they had a wonderful intimacy and communication, nonverbal communication with each other that I really thought worked well. And they're both wonderful actors to work with.
How was the directing experience for film? Had you done any directing for stage before with your work, or
Yes,
had you exclusively done writing?
I've done quite a bit of stage directing, but this was exciting and horrifying and terrifying all at the same time. And but I loved it. It's all for me. It's all about learning and continuing to grow as an artist. So it was great. It was terrifying, and as I said earlier, I had an enormous amount of help from my crew.
Fantastic. Uh, your film has a lot of heart and emotion. It starts off where you're not quite sure exactly what direction it's going to go, and then by the end you get all of the feels. So uh, films like that, you can't be serious all the time. I mean, yes, when the cameras are rolling, but you have to kind of lighten the mood a little bit on set too. And I know there's a lot of things. I've seen a lot of behind the scenes at theaters of what they do. Were there any particularly funny or really memorable moments in the course of making this film that still stand out to you?
There was some, well, it was, as I said, a great cast and crew who all had a wonderful, it was one of the most well run sets I've ever been on. Again, that's thanks to John Bergstrom, who is one of our producers as well as the first AD. And he ran a very tight ship, but everybody was there uh, in a very professional way, but also a loose and kind of fun way, knowing that we were dealing with a difficult, serious subject, dramatic subject, but so they were giving lots of space and quiet around the set for the actors and us to work together. But when we were not working, when they were changing lights in the sets, we had lots of humor. There was one thing I'll recall that we were one of the mornings we shot it in 2 days, and one of the mornings it was quite cold, and our lead actor Tim was in his bathroom. He was, and you could see his smoke. You could see his breath, in the air, and we had to like wait for the things to heat up. So he was shivering. We had to take him off and give him a cup of warm coffee. And people don't see that thing, see those moments on the film. We were able to fix it, but
The
that was
beauty of editing, no one knows the wiser except now they do.
yeah, yeah.
So, Klamath Independent Film Festival is not the first place that your film is being shown. You've taken it around to several different festivals. What has that experience been like, from Hawaii to New York?
Well, again, mostly virtual in
Yeah.
this time. We just played in Toronto at what's called the Real Heart International Film Festival. That was very exciting, and it's going to play. It's also was done in the script was done. It had a live read in Omaha at the Omaha Film Festival. It's a finalist at the Oregon Short Film Festival, which is going to be next month. Actually, this month. What month are we in? It's August, and it's was just accepted up in Seattle at the local sightings film festival, which is part of their Northwest Film Forum up there. And so it's been really exciting. It's been kind of different. I was sort of really hoping I was going to get into a festival so that I would get to go to the festival and be in the theater to hear an audience react to it. So I'm sort of sad that I'm not going to see that. Don't get that. It's not quite the same thing watching it online with your family and friends, but it's still fabulous. It's still an incredible experience just to be accepted and selected to be part of something like this.
That's really understandable for someone who has a lot of theater background, because on stage you get that immediate reaction if there's something comedic or dramatic. You can hear an audience laugh, and you can gauge how people are receiving it just from body language. That's a little bit harder when you're watching on TV or on your computer or on screen.
Yeah.
Um, are you planning to do future film projects as well, or was this just kind of dip your toe into the ocean to see how it goes?
No, no, I'm all in. I have another script that took second place at the Los Angeles Independent Film Festival and is was just got was selected by what's called the Willamette Writers Group, has a film lab, and that won first place. And I'm sort of in pre-production to do that, and that's a comedy, a fantasy. It's called Laundromat Tango. It's about a woman who works in a laundromat who has a fantasy about a tango dancer. And I have another script that I'm sort of in pre-production right now that's going to be a comedy that we're thinking about. We're talking about doing it either with paper cutout animation or puppets. Uh, and then I'm working on my first feature-length screenplay, which is a drama, and I'm going to be happy to be moving on from that because it's intense, and I'm ready to go write another comedy after that. Right.
Terrific. Any final thoughts about your film or things that you think people should know about it?
Just if they aren't film people, they need to appreciate how much I appreciate the enormous number of people who were involved in putting it on. We had at least 18 or 19 people involved in our crew, from the gaffers to the designers and to the lighting people and the editors and the grips and the catering people. Shout out to my wife who handled the catering, which was great. And so just so many people involved. As they, it takes a village, just like in theater. And it's just it was a wonderful experience, and hope everybody enjoyed it.
Terrific. So thank you, Charlie. And in addition to being available to see online through Eventive, people can also catch Myosotis Love here in Klamath Falls at the Ross Raglan Theater on Sunday, September 20th at 2:45 p.m. at the 8th Annual Klamath Independent Film Festival. So thank you so much. I hope everyone watching this enjoyed the film, and thank you, Charlie. We look forward to seeing your next project.